All right, welcome to A Growing Concern. And tonight my growing concern is going to be about the growing of Portland. I moved here in 1972, what's that, 43 years, hard to believe, 43 years is and you know, over the years I can remember some folks, friends of mine and me rented a place like $90 a month, two bedroom. And you know, recently I've always been one that I just prefer to rent rather than a hassle of owning. And over the years, I've been kind of watching it, and just last couple, 3 years, we were looking for a place 2 years ago. I couldn't believe the prices of things. And now we're having to move again because the landlord decided to sell the house. And it's incredible what's going on out there for prices. And I've got a guest that's going to talk about that. This is Karen Crichton. She's with a group called Stop Demolishing Portland. And you know, demolishing Portland is an aspect of what's going on. And the rents and the prices are going up. Everybody, the common knowledge is, oh, everybody from California is coming up here. They sold an outhouse for $400,000, and they come up here and buy a 5-bedroom suite. But it isn't quite that simple, and there's a lot more to it than that. Although that is a factor in what's going on, and the factor of the fact that you know. Droughts maybe and water shortages in other parts of the country. I mean, this area appears looking better all the time. I mean, you know, there's like, what, 10 million people in LA, and there's not that many in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana probably. So people are moving up to this less populous area. But we'll talk with Karen Crichton here, and in the last 15-20 minutes we have a video. I'll explain that when we get to it here, though. But Karen, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I want to do a shout out to a fellow that's been on the program many times, Jamie Partridge, who I couldn't find any contact information on these different organizations that are working to make affordable housing more affordable and more available. And Jamie Partridge, who folks have watched him talk a lot about a lot of different issues, $15 an hour now, and the Postal Service. And he got Karen in touch with me, and I want to thank him for that.
Agreed.
Anything you want to know about, Jamie knows about it when it comes to activities. But on with the program, you're with Stop Demolishing Portland, and what is the main basis? Obviously, the name says it, but what is the main thing that you're talking about? Some of the attendance specifics and statistics involved in that.
Well, we started out really as before I had even come along. It was a Facebook group. It was fairly small. It was a great discussion group. A lot of people that were interested in historic preservation.
How long ago?
Were involved in it. I got involved maybe a year ago.
Oh, okay.
And I learned so much from this group of people about the importance of the historical and vintage, both houses and commercial properties. Just learned so much and learned a lot about zoning, things like that. It's all important for everybody to know. What we're seeing right now, I think our focus is becoming more and more on the loss of affordable housing that's occurring because of the city is allowing developers to find various ways to tear down one classic house and replace it with maybe 2 or 3 attached skinny houses that are 3 stories tall.
Better known as pencil houses, I think. They're all over the place.
They are. There's a lot of questions about quality of those. They're tearing down houses that have stood for, 80 plus years that have a on our decent sized lot. They have a yard for the kids to play. They'll tear one down and replace it with, say, 3 skinny houses attached together, no yard. I was looking at the plans for a development the other day that was just like that, one house being replaced by several row houses, and what they were calling the play area was a 12-foot by 12-foot square behind each of these skinny houses. Mm-hmm. This is where kids are left with to play at these houses. I think most of us want to hang on to at least some of that. Those single-family home neighborhoods where a lot of us grew up. We had room around us. We had gardens.
Right, and there was parking. That is becoming an incredible. We haven't even discussed that part of it yet, but I'll throw that out there that there's I know they're on Hawthorne. They just built Hawthorne and Division are building them. It seems like every week, and there's hardly any parking available.
And that comes back down to what the true issue is that the city, the mayor and council, who create the policies, who direct the city staff to give permits and you know what the standards will be, they're allowing really developers to build things that are completely inappropriate for these neighborhoods. They're not requiring parking. That will be, as I mentioned, we'll be having an action tomorrow on Southeast Hawthorne at 34th and Hawthorne. There's a big vintage house there that I think a lot of people would recognize. It's been a fourplex for years. The rents are very reasonable. There we go. And that's about to be demolished and be replaced with 5 stories and 30 apartments with 0 dedicated parking. And the city has permitted this. It's up to the city to represent the people who already live here, to represent the businesses along that street, and provide them with the basic infrastructure, basic things that they need. And to tear down one fourplex, replace it with 30 apartments in an area where you can't already get a parking place is completely inappropriate.
Only if somebody's pulling out as you drive by.
Exactly.
You know, we cup and saucer sometimes we go down there, and if you're lucky, you know, and then if you turn right and try to park along that way, sometimes the block is like 3-4 blocks long before you can get back around, and it's just a maze over there.
Exactly.
And there's no you know, I've been kind of smiling about Mayor Hales ever since he stopped that Pembina propane terminal that was supposed to go in. I thought, he's a pretty good guy. Well, that's about the only thing apparently he did. You know, years ago, I remember when Leonard was running against Serena Cruz? I didn't vote for her because her husband was a developer. Mm-hmm. But, you know, they've already got the front and center with the city council, let alone, you know, having a mayor whose husband is a developer, because they pretty much have the ear of the city council, it seems. And, and that is about the only way that the citizens are going to be able to get any redress for this issue?
Well, yeah, if you look at the mayor's, he's been raising money for quite some time already for his re-election campaign. And I would invite everybody maybe to visit our Facebook page, and if you don't already, learn how to look up the campaign finance files on the Secretary of State's website. If you look at Charlie Hale's list of campaign contributors right now, virtually every single one of them is somebody who profits from more development and less regulation.
Sounds like Republican. Even though I know it's not a party.
Nonpartisan.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly. and it is pretty progressive. But, you know, I guess with the urban growth boundary, I mean, from my understanding is you can either sprawl or you can go up. Mm-hmm. And since the urban growth boundary is stopping the sprawl, we're stuck with this. Now, is that really what it's about?
No, we're not stuck with that at all, frankly. We have plenty of, we have ample vacant land, even in just the city of Portland, but it's not in the trendy neighborhoods where people want to buy these big monster houses or the trendy apartments, you know, like what we're talking about on Hawthorne.
Hawthorne or
so
Division.
So in the city, instead of requiring them to make use of land that is already vacant, they're allowing them to demolish anything they can get their hands on. There's another issue too, that there's the developers, and I don't want to lump all developers into the same category. I'm sure there's good ones, but this is what we're seeing lately in the city. The developers have found I suppose you could call it a loophole, where they're using these underlying lot lines on these old houses, the old properties in the old neighborhoods. They're able to demolish one house and then use the old lot lines from before that house was built, demolish it, and then they can split it up and fit even more houses on there. Mm-hmm. And the city, again, has done absolutely nothing to try to correct that or end that.
And it ain't like they don't know this is happening. I mean, this is causing problems out there, because I know the parking situation a while back, I think on Division, was causing some real consternation with, because you drive up and down there now and there's some nice boutiques and nice restaurants and some of these places that we're talking about, and you can't park anywhere near there anymore. I don't know what the people that live there are doing.
I agree. And frankly, it has to violate the ADA. Because the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Right, oh, I would imagine so, right.
Someone with disabilities couldn't live in a building on Hawthorne that where you'd have to park several blocks down the street.
Yeah, and you can't really double park in the middle of the street. Just to even let somebody off, traffic would be snarled in no time.
Exactly.
So, you know, I'm thinking about it in the neighborhood of Lentz where I live. These houses are going up, and well, I guess we could talk a little bit about how this is affecting the prices of everything.
Yes.
And
yes.
like I said, Californians come up here with their money, and you know, other parts of the country. A friend of mine said he just saw that we're the fourth most expensive city in the country. Though I kind of doubt that, but we may be getting expensive at a faster rate than everybody, but you know, 3 other cities. I don't know, but how does that dynamic work out? That it ends up being building these houses jumps the price up on everything else.
And we're actually, to go back to that for just a second, we are being put out there as the most gentrified city in the United States.
I haven't heard that yet. That might have been what he was.
Could have been.
What he was talking
Could
about.
have been,
Yeah.
and that absolutely. A lot of people, and that's something everybody needs to decide for themselves what their definition of gentrification is. That's a big discussion among what we're working on.
Well,
but
I know what I think. But
yeah. Well, and also we need to decide, you know, what's our definition of affordable. You know, there's finally we're starting to see in the mainstream media where they're getting out there and covering seniors, people with disabilities, families with young children that literally cannot find a place to live. School's about to start. There's families that can't find housing and they need to get signed up in school. There's seniors and people with disabilities that are literally being left out in the cold. I'd like to see some really current statistics on our homeless population. I'm certain it's increasing. I mean, you hear that from the homeless advocates.
Well, sure, they say, you know, we're all 2 or 3 paychecks, you know, from being homeless.
Yeah.
And you know, I forget what percentage. There's a high percentage of the homeless that are veterans, and even a higher percentage of the veterans of the homeless that actually work. And maybe even, you know, once you get out there, you know, like what is one of the big issues I've been finding out is they're all property managers now. So you're not dealing with the owners, you're dealing with property managers. That's going to bump the price up.
Exactly.
And a lot of them are wanting, I know a person a while back that they bumped her rent up $200.
Yeah.
And then that put it up almost too much for her to handle. And she got looking around and come to find out most places want proof of 3 times your rent. So, you know, if you're looking at a $1,500 place, you got to show proof that you make $4,500.
Exactly.
And, you know, that's not affordable.
Exactly. The average Social Security retirement check in the United States is $1,300 a month. That leaves everybody really who's dependent on just their Social Security check for housing. And even leaves them out cold.
Well, if you're making, let's say that's just quickly in our head, a person making $15 an hour, that's $600 a week. You know, that's $2,400. That's not 3 times what it would cost to rent a house. A guy has a wife and a kid or a couple of kids, and say they're both working part time or whatever. There's no way a person with a family and even with both people working that would be able to rent a place that's, because I used to figure $300 a bedroom. Then it was $400 a bedroom. Now you look at a 3-bedroom house, it's $1,800 a month. And and who can have, you know, that's 50.
Where would that be? Out in East County, maybe. I mean, the ones in Portland, for what we're hearing of prices, we're hearing from people who their rent suddenly went up, you know, hundreds of dollars a month, and they get whatever the minimum required notice is, 30 days, 60 days, but that's even if they worked a second job, they went out and found a second job, they couldn't make that rent bump.
Right.
And that's a lot of our issue, is that in Oregon, the state has tied the hands of the cities in a lot of ways. The cities, there's a ban on cities requiring a developer to include affordable housing called inclusionary zoning. There's a state ban on a city being allowed to tell a developer that, yes, you can build that building, but 30% of it has to be truly affordable apartments. And then also...
That's a greed clause, isn't it?
And there's when I lived in, when I first lived in Portland many years ago, there was a law that my landlord could only raise my rent $60 a month per year. And landlords were a little nervous back then about evicting people in order to bump up the rent. And now it's a free-for-all.
Yeah, it's free for all.
Yeah.
We just got a call. I didn't notice that we had the call thing up there. I guess they decided that in a control room to take this on their own. Yeah. But yeah, we would love to field some phone calls. First caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Jim. How you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm great.
You got something to bring to the discussion here?
Yes. It's real clear we don't want poor people living in Portland. This has become an absolute yuppie magnet for the entire country. Everybody thinks this is the place to be. My biggest concern, not only is affordable housing so that neighborhoods are integrated and we have none of this, I'm sick of having only yuppie restaurant choices and stuff. And I can't go into New Seasons or Whole Foods and shop. I can't afford those places. Although they would make my property values higher so I could pay more taxes, but then when I sold my house, I guess I get the money. But my biggest concern, as someone who's lived in Portland always, is we are literally running out of green space the way we are building and putting no lawns around houses. And I think that's a long-term livability and even a mental health issue. We already have serious stormwater overflow problems because too much of the city is paved.
Yeah.
And we're making it worse, and piling people into an environment where, Portland was a really desirable place to move to 30 or 40 years ago, but the people who have moved here have now turned it into the East Coast or Midwest cities that they left, and they think it's just fine because we're still better than Detroit, which is 40% empty at this point and falling down. But, compared to what? This place has been so degraded, in my mind, in terms of desirability as a place to live and sustainability and livability and just beauty in the last 30-plus years with this mega development they're doing. And I am firmly in favor of not urban sprawling. But they could do this so much more smartly. And I also don't understand why they're building houses as big as they are when you hear there's a trend for people to downsize. They could be putting 3 little houses that were suitable for a couple or a starter home and still have some green space and not have them totally out of proportion with the neighborhood. These are just ugly monstrosities that don't fit, as far as I'm concerned.
And they're built like crap, too.
Yeah, they have to be. As fast as they go up, they're not going to last as long as my 100-year-old house.
They won't last as long as a house that they tore down.
Exactly. So I'm really glad that there are people stepping up and doing something about this, because it's been bugging me for years.
It sounds like it. Well, you're not the only one. That's why I decided this time. My situation is I was already aware of this, but I had not heard of Stop Demolishing Portland and these organizations that are working in that direction. And I really appreciate you calling up and you brought up some good points that we hadn't even touched on yet.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Well, good for what you're doing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Boy, where do you start? This whole idea of the shoddy. They wouldn't say they're being built shoddy, of course, but some of the points he made up. Anything you want to address? Anything he talked about?
Sure.
I'm sure you do here.
We only have an hour.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to play that video.
No. No, just the one thing, though, that she brought up that was a very good point was, why are they allowing these huge houses? And my theory, and the theory of a whole lot of other people, is that when it's a smaller, older house with maybe 1.5 bathrooms, they're getting a set amount of property taxes from that. They tear that down, build 2 or 3 monster houses that fill up the entire yard. That's a big bump in their property tax
Follow
base.
the money. There you go.
So
So it isn't just that they're chums with the contractors or whatever, the developers. It's that it's actually it profits them as well.
I think it's the whole package. Yeah, Charlie Hales has a history with the Home Builders Association, and yeah.
one thing I was thinking about just before he called, Karen, that demolishing, that's literally what they do. I mean, some of these places have very usable materials in them, but I don't see that being done at all. They just crush it.
We have big issues with that. They bring in a skip loader thing, a cat with a scoop, and they just pull it up to the house and smash that house. And we've talked to people that they knew there were these beautiful hardwood floors in the house. There was one that had this beautiful woodwork, 100-year-old house, you know, woodwork fixtures, everything. Smash it. And anything pre-1978 is full of lead paint and probably asbestos, and they do a terrible job at mitigating the dust. You'll see we've got video after video of a house being smashed, a historic church being smashed, and these massive clouds of dust with going into the neighbors' yards. We've got somebody who came to our group recently. They just brought a brand new baby home, and the house right across I believe it's next door, is about to be demolished. And they have some pretty serious concerns. It's well documented that a small amount of lead exposure causes brain damage in children.
Especially infants.
Yes. Yes.
It's just like a lot of your heavy metals and your radioactivity. There's no safe level, even though they established safe levels for cadmium and all these different things. But individuals react differently to things, and there's really no safe level at all. And to hear that they're going out of their way to profit from this at the same time, I'm sure that if you were to ask Charlie Hales, he'll say that, you know, what I was mentioning, we have to densify because we don't want to sprawl. And I'm sure they have their spiel down. But your organization, I'm sure, have you met with the Hales or any of the? And I'm just, how do they respond to your concerns?
I send out press releases every time we do any action or anything. Sometimes I'll copy them on those. Also, I'll send an email to each of them, the mayor and the commissioners, and invite them to our actions. Tell them that these people in this community need to hear from you about what's going on in their neighborhoods, and they don't come. You know, they don't. We barely hear from them. We get the cut and paste messages back.
Right.
You know.
Didn't you say that it was one of the city council that was most favorable towards your issues? It wasn't Amanda. It was Nick Fish.
Well, I'm not sure I would go so far as to say he's favorable, but the house next door to his got demolished a couple of months ago.
Wake up call.
We're wondering. We haven't heard from him, but he seems possibly open to at least a dialogue. I'm always totally open to at least talking with somebody and see what they have to say. You know.
Well, you said that there was we could lose the phone there, and we could put up the graphic about.
Oh, do you have a call waiting?
No, that's just let them know that somebody called. And that was a great call too, by the way.
Yes.
I want to thank that caller.
Yes.
But put up the graphic for the rally, or is that a rally tomorrow?
It's just an action in front of we're doing actions on the second Friday of each month. We pick a key spot in different locations. We were up at the corner of Fremont and North Williams last Friday, actually, and always get tons of honks and cheers and everything else. So we're doing a monthly regular action, and then we're targeting various houses as we come across them, and as we can catch them before they're demolished. That's a lot of our issue too, that we don't know the exact day that a house will be demolished, and that's a big issue for the neighbors who want to avoid, like the people with the baby, want to avoid the dust and everything. But so we had discovered that someone had told our group that this house on Hawthorne, 34th and Hawthorne, is a large white house. A lot of people would recognize it. It's about to be demolished and replaced with 5 stories and 30 apartments and no parking. So we're going to be out there tomorrow just to help inform everybody and let the city know.
Has it ever been? Is this attention to it ever stopped any of them from being demolished?
No.
It hasn't.
No.
Well,
no,
it's
just hard to.
That just means that folks out there need to get on and put your shoulder to the wheel with us.
Yes.
There.
Yes.
Because there's other areas that need to be talked about and need to be worked on, as well as the demolishing. Just because even if they weren't demolishing a house, there's a vacant lot, they may still be putting these same houses up, and they still have the parking problems, and they still have
Yeah.
the issues of green spaces that the caller brought up. There's a lot of other things going on. Huh? Looks we got another person on the line here. A nice caller, you're on the air.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm a native Portlander.
Then you've seen some changes then.
I'm 51, yeah, and actually my family goes back. We homesteaded, so I go way
Wow.
back. I got a lot of things to say about what I've been seeing, and the stop demolition's great, and the protests are great. I'd love to go down there, but really, we need people that are educated in city law. Or just law that can go down and help stop the zoning. The permitting and the zoning, because these guys have an in with these officials to change the laws and get what they want. And I know Dan Saltzman is the commissioner head of housing
Oh,
down
okay.
at the city council, and I've talked to him about low-income housing and how concerned I am about that here, and there really isn't any. It's like a needle in a haystack. And
What did he tell you, if you don't?
well, I saved the email, but basically what I've been seeing and what I'm against is kind of what you guys were talking about with housing earlier, how they're taking the East Coast style and trying to shove it down our throats here.
Right.
With the skinny houses, the tall houses. And and I understand that they have a limit on the urban growth boundary, and I'm very much in favor of that. I think we should have a limited urban growth boundary. I'm glad Metro has maintained that for as long as they have.
They've done a good job with that.
Not
Yes.
to mention, unfortunately, Clackamas County hasn't. But we have.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing for what they're trying to do with... I came from I bought a house in East Portland because 10, 12 years ago, that's all I could afford. And it got so bad out there. Shootings every other day. I had to get out, and it took me 9 months to sell out there.
How far east are you talking about?
I was just on the borderline off of like 162nd.
Oh, it's right there, the border. Yeah.
I was like 169th, real close to that area, and the houses are not selling over there.
Well, the only ones that you can find that are fairly decent are from 148th on out, usually.
Well, I don't know, indecent in terms of what. All I can tell
decent-
you speak as to the houses are great. I loved my house.
Well, the houses, they're pretty good size, and you can get them for a lot cheaper rent than you can.
Yes, lots of very nice 60s built ranch-style homes out
Right.
there.
And they're much more inexpensive than they are when you start getting into...
Can you live? Is it livable? That's my issue. I found it as a single woman. It wasn't livable for me. I had to get out. It was scary. So
Well, I'm not out there, so I've heard that, but I haven't experienced that. I'm glad you bring that
It
up.
was scary. I mean, it was so scary. And it just got worse year after year. But my problem, what I spoke about with Mr. Saltzman on an email was, what I'm seeing is they want to build one large building with maybe 3, 4 floors and one entrance.
Sounds like a
That
fire
style
trap.
of housing for low-income people, it's like they want to just shove them in a box with one entrance and exit. And to me, that's not Portland. That's not livability. That's so, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a solution. It almost seems a bit institutional. And I just wish that we could come up with better solutions to diversify low-income housing throughout the city. And
I don't know. You seem to be pretty well versed in this. How are other cities handling this? Do you say better solutions? Are there better
you know
solutions?
what? I don't travel. I'm a hardcore Portlander, but I would love to. I've heard this thrown around recently about rent control. I heard through the independent living resources people that something happened a year ago, July, with city council that favored the landlords in the city of Portland, that allowed them to raise their rents so that they didn't have to take people with vouchers. because the HUD vouchers will pay up to a certain amount per month for rent, and if it goes over that, that property's off limits. And I heard that at some point, City Council did some maneuvering with landlords and ruled in favor of landlords, and so a lot of properties and landlords got to keep out these low-income people. And he denied it. He didn't really address it. But I was told through the independent living resources folks that it had happened. And I would like to have people check out rent control. I'd like to know how that works. Because if we're going to be heading for, like San Francisco or New York,
We are already.
then I can't afford to live here. I'm a native Portlander, and I'm going to have to go.
I'm considering moving out of the city. I mean, way out.
My family. Why should I have to do that? And the wages don't. I'm not an educated person, so the wages aren't going. They're not keeping up with what is required for to keep a roof over my head. So. It's a difficult situation. As I get older, I'm finding it more and more difficult to take care of myself in this city.
I find myself at age 68 wondering, my God,
When I was younger and working, I didn't have any problem. I had enough money in my pocket. I could pay for my housing and everything else here.
Right, but housing was a lot cheaper then.
Exactly, but what I'm saying is wages haven't moved.
No.
And everything else has. And I'm at a point now where try getting a job at 55. That's not very easy to do anymore.
No.
So where are we going until I'm of age where I can get some Social Security? What's going to happen to me?
And they're trying to bump that up too.
Right.
So
unless you plan wisely as a young person, and even then, I know lots of people that hasn't worked because they've either had a medical crisis or some other crisis.
Sure.
So anyway, I just feel as if housing is a ridiculous issue in Portland. Portland is becoming just way too hipster, yuppie, and
all the young people coming to Portland to retire.
They're pushing people out to areas that have no representation. So.
Right.
That's all I want to say.
Well, you said a lot, and you've made some good points. I appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. These are things that we hear over and over again, what these two callers said, over and over. And as far as rent control, we discuss that a lot, but that's also been banned at the state level. So,
I wrote that down because you mentioned that. So the state level has stopped that from happening?
But here's the thing. When I've done other aspects of activism in Portland, and in other contexts, I hear a lot that Portland dictates to the state what they want, to maybe ODOT and some of the other state agencies.
Since we got half the population here.
Exactly. We're the biggest city. We've got it all. So we get to dictate to the state. But right now, if you went to the city and said, why don't you have rent control? Why don't you have inclusionary zoning? Why aren't you building affordable housing? Well, it's all the state's fault. They won't let us do it. They've tied our hands. Exactly.
Yeah, I can understand that. Well, something we discussed a little bit over the phone when we first met was I remember Bruce Bouchard, when he used to do the Independent Producers Organization show with us, we talked a little bit about it. And he was running for city council, and he was bringing up the possibility of why not break it into quadrants and have districts elect a representative as a councilman rather than at large all the way across. And that keeps coming up in my mind whenever I start having issues with the city council is the people that at large are electing each one of them. If they were elected in districts, that would probably work a little bit better. And didn't you say there's some kind of movement to do that?
There is a ballot measure that'll be on the ballot in the next election. It's kind of long and complicated. People need to read it and see how they feel about it. But that is the end goal, to end up with where you elect a representative. That person represents your area. They have to live in that district, and you vote on them.
Well, it's already broke up into northeast, southeast, etc. I mean, it's broke up into 4 quadrants. It's made, and you said that would mean there'd be a city manager. Or
No,
is
they
that
didn't
something
include, that's sort of something I always liked the city manager system of city government personally, but they didn't include a city manager. I guess part of my concern with I believe they would have 7 or possibly even 9, I need to read it again, counselors if they do that.
Well,
if
it wouldn't
this
be just 4
passes.
then. I see.
Oh yeah, it'd be quite a few more. But without, I guess my feeling personally, and I don't want to, affect their outcome particularly. To me, to have that many counselors without a city manager to fulfill, the council and the mayor set policy, and then you need that city manager to really fulfill that.
To herd the cats.
Exactly. Yeah, put it into the nuts and bolts reality.
Sure. Well, I can
Yeah.
understand that, but I know this has been years ago. I heard about this, and there are cities that do it that way, though, right?
Yeah.
And are they any more or less successful with their issues?
Well, frankly, what I'm seeing too much lately, and as I mentioned, I actually live in Lake Oswego, do some activism in Tigard, so I follow those cities as well. And I think what I'm seeing is a problem, frankly, is we just aren't, and here in Portland too, we're not having people stepping up to run for office. We're listen to these complaints about the really basic things in Portland. And I'm not hearing a lot of people clamoring to run for council still, or mayor. We're hoping Ted Wheeler is going to step up and run against Hales.
Well, you can kind of thank the people for that, for getting rid of voter-owned elections, where
Yes.
people didn't have any name recognition or whatever could jump up there like Amanda did, Fritz,
Exactly.
and get
Yep.
the money, $200,000 to run, and that to me that was a dynamic changing possibility. But then I don't know, it's went away because for some reason people were. All you got to do is just campaign on something that, it's going to cost you money to label your food or to do this or do that, and people voted down. And that was a big mistake. And that dynamic is really showing up in the situation you're talking about. We don't have anybody running. I mean, look at nationally what we have running. Millionaires, billionaires, and it's always, it's never anybody that's come up from the roots, and when they do, they're still down there with the roots because nobody knows about them.
And I am concerned, frankly, about the disconnect that so many people, I'm surprised we don't have more callers, frankly, because we hear this over and over and over again with our group. But at the same time, there was just some polling done because Ted Wheeler is still considering running for mayor of Portland. And Hales came out with about a 40% approval rating. So 40% of the people are okay with what he's doing, and they want him to do it for 4 more years.
That's not very high.
Well, I don't know. That's too high to me.
Oh, is
Like
it?
I said, that's all we hear are people that are. You can talk to people in all walks of life, and they've got to complain about something in Portland right now with the traffic, the sprawl, the
Traffic. Wow.
Yeah.
Traffic's terrible
Yeah.
in places. And I've spent a lot of time behind the wheel, and I've learned how to get around it and when to go away from certain streets like Powell or whatever. And it's folks who don't have that knowledge. It can be gridlock. I drive over 205 every day, a couple times, and it's a parking lot.
Oh.
And that was supposed to relieve the parking lot called I-5.
Exactly.
Now we got these 2 big parking lots now going north. And I don't know, were they going to build another one?
Yeah.
So I don't know. And that may not be attributable to, in large part, to the housing, but they're all one dynamic. They all work together.
Transportation is a big one. Maybe it would make more sense to build apartment buildings with little or no parking if we had an adequate public transportation system here, but we don't.
I heard I hear that Portland's supposed to have a pretty good one, but I don't use it. But I know that they close down some of these lines on weekends when people need to use them. Bus
Exactly.
lines.
The trains go down when it gets over 90 degrees?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And we're getting more and more days. We just broke the record of 25 or something like that. And it's 2014 was the hottest year on record. Now this one's going to beat that one out. Now next year going to be the same, and the next one going to be the same. We're just going to keep breaking last year's record and all this heat, and that isn't going to deter people coming up here and up in our population because the heat's the same there too. You know, and the drought might be the same. So yeah, I don't know. It's issues are very important that we're talking about, and they do affect people even if they're in a nice house and they don't are affected directly. It affects we're all in this together, folks, and it's affecting us all. You know, it affects you if you're driving. It's affecting your friends or your neighbors, or your kid grows up, graduates from college or whatever, and wants to locate here. You know, he goes out there and he needs $2,500 a month to rent a house, and $6,000 to get into it.
Exactly.
And that second caller. You know, that was her situation. And then the crime situation. You know, I don't know if you can relate that to what's going on now or not. Is there any way to plug that in?
Well, a lot of the goal in a lot of cities with low-income housing is to mix it with, so there's always a mix in every neighborhood. So it certainly benefits the low-income, especially the kids, to be able to live in maybe a neighborhood where there's also single-family neighborhoods, and be a part of maybe. That sort of environment, instead of like the old days when they would build housing projects, you know, and isolate everybody low income into these towers with no yards, you know.
The hive, I call them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I picture the gulags or whatever in Russia, or the Chinese, where just miles and miles of these just tenements.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's terrible.
And that's with the affordable houses being torn down. The older apartment buildings are being demolished. That's what you know, if they're going to scramble to try to provide housing for all these people that are like the callers that, you know, are having trouble finding housing, you know, that they can afford, if they suddenly decide they're going to scramble to build some affordable housing, that's what we're going to end up with, you know.
That's true. Well, I think we've covered this pretty good. We have a video to play now. I appreciate the callers. I appreciate Karen, you coming in here and talking about this.
Thank you.
And we're not going to let go of this issue. We're going to talk about it more in the future. And then maybe you can get someone else to come in along with yourself, and we can do an hour or something like that.
Great.
But there's 2 years ago, there was the Lummi tribe, Lummi Nation up north. They're having an issues with a coal facility of some kind they're trying to put in there at Cherry Point. And we're familiar with all that coal and the oil and the gas and everything we're under the gun for as well. And they carved a totem pole in Montana and then carted it through and had various talks here and there. And then they bring it up north. And they're doing it again right now, and they're going to be in Portland. There's the thing right there, St. Philip Neri Catholic Church. And that's the beginning of the video. We're not quite ready yet. But what's going on here is it's called Blessings of the Shared Responsibility Totem Pole. Gathering of tribal leadership, environmental and civic groups and organizations, faith-based community, and the general public will take part in the blessing of the Lummi Indian Community Shared Responsibility Totem Pole. And that's where it's going to be. And the speakers are Lummi leader and master totem pole carver, Jewel James, Paul Lummi of the Columbia River Tribal Fishing Commission, Jenny Holmes, Interfaith Power and Light, folks from Greenpeace, Sierra Club, 350 PDX, Portland Rising, and South Sound Rising. A lot of good folks are going to be there. And Jewel James spoke at this one that was 2 years ago. And he was one powerful speaker. And I played it on the show back then, and I thought it might be a good idea to play it on the show tonight. And he's about a 15-minute plus some Native American drumming, and that lasts for 14 minutes. So we got about 30 seconds left of the program here, and then we're going to go out on that video. So I want to thank you again, Karen, for coming on. You brought a lot of good information and got me gnashing my teeth a couple of times. So you did a good job. And the callers as well, they did a great job. They brought in dynamics that I hadn't even considered yet. And that's what, this is not going to get stopped unless we can continue to act like a community. And corporations always win, developers or whatever, when people don't act like a community. And that's what we need to do. And also I want to thank the crew. They're in there pushing all the right buttons and making us look good out here. So we'll be back next week. Thanks for tuning in. So, go ahead. The ones from the other side came to us, and they said, the elder said, that passed on, sing that song for us. And we asked them which one. They said, you know which one. You sing that song for us. We're here because we remember, we love all the ancestors that have ever come before this. All of us are children of the earth. And we're all held accountable for what we do to the earth. We're really happy to be able to work with my brother Kurt, humble man over there, always hiding amongst the crowd. But he works for the Native American Land Conservancy. We're the House of Tears carvers. My sister here, her dad helped create the House of Tears carvers. He was a big brother to Kurt and I. Taught us a lot about love and culture. Taught us that love and culture and tradition are all the same thing. If you understand it, if you take it to your heart. He always told us to listen with your heart, not your mind. This is the biggest mind that you can ever have right here. It's got to go through the heart to have meaning. And so we appreciate he left those words for us to remind his daughter and grandchild. Those are his words. And he always said, the elders gave them to me to give to you. And when you say them out loud, you gave them to them. And so you're doing the work that the elders want you to do, to pass it on, that we can't be greedy. We're supposed to give these words to everybody that will listen. And it's that type of mind that we have when we travel. Tom Sampson from Vancouver, he's an elder that the whole Lummi Nation loves the man. He's kind and generous with his teachings. He came to us when we were doing the totem pole journeys for the United States. He said the totem pole is not a sacred thing. It's when you gather as a people, when you come together with that oneness, that mind. That's what creates the sacred moment. That's what's sacred. Don't get confused. You're just a messenger. You're just doing work for the Spirit. And so we love him for that. He shared that kind teaching with us. We went to Northern Cheyenne, and if they dig up that coal mine, if they have that permit, it's going to come right through here to Longview, up to Longview, and then to Asia. And they feel the native families, the white farmers, and the local church people, the environmental group, Sierra clubs there. They all kind of feel isolated, like you're not hearing them. They want you to hear them. They're there. They're praying. They're protesting. They're determined to stop the coal on that end. But they need us to do our part in between all the way to the end. And that's our job here, to form a coalition, to hear each other, to communicate, and to spread the word. We're not a people that believe we gave dominance. We were not given dominance over the earth. We're just one of God's children, of all those children out there. And everything on creation, on the earth, belongs to God. And they're all God's children. Every animal, every blade of grass, every bird, every bee, they all vibrate with the earth. They all have a song. And they all have a right to be heard and felt and to exist. You heard us said how many trains will be coming through this way if you get a permit, if they get permission. If we don't do our job to stop them. Every day, you know that adds up at the highest side. About 63 tons of coal falling off the trains. 63 tons between here and there, just on today's estimate of the number of trains, full of arsenic and mercury, going into your water, right into your home through the taps, going into your salmon. We know that we don't want that type of world, and we know that we're the most selfish nation on the earth.
We want more faster and we waste it quicker than any other race on the earth, any other nation. We don't know how not to live the high life. We don't know how to turn our lights off and our taps off. We don't know how to quit watering our lawns and spreading the herbicides and pesticides and fungicides and mold inhibitors, taste enhancers and color enhancers in our food that we feed our kids. We're accustomed to pollution. We're accustomed to contamination. And we have to do something because we're setting the role model for our kids. And so, when we join together with coalitions and go to Northern Cheyenne and hear them, we're doing something. When you came here, you're doing something. You're speaking out. You're showing that being here, taking action, is greater than promising to take action. When we went up to Missoula, one of the council members came out and spent time with us. He's against the coal trains going through Missoula. Now we know Crow Nation, Navajo Nation, and Hopi have nothing else. We know what it's like to suffer in poverty. But we can't accept the contamination either. We're sorry. We're brother nations, sister nations. We're the same people. We know you hurt, but we can't take the contamination. We can't allow it to go through. We have to change somehow. We went up to Crow Nation to pay respect. Even though we're on opposite sides of the table, we still have to respect each other. We went up to Spokane and they're still suffering, that people in Spokane, still suffering from the nuclear radiation from the digging during World War II for uranium. Everybody's gone now and left it there for them. The pollution, the contamination, the cancer, and the death. We went to Celilo Falls. They're still crying because they killed the falls. And now the coal's coming through. And they're a little village that has lived forever. Their people still live and die there today. And they want you to hear their voice. And I know Columbia River hears them. I know the group that protects the Columbia River hears them. But it's our duty for all of us to work like that, to share with each other the knowledge and the information. I was really impressed when I got Power Past Coal's publication. A lot of information in those organizations' publications. We need to be able to network. There's no excuses. You got cell phones, iPods and iPads and computers. It's in every part of the media. We're a total connected world. They can't get away with it anymore. We're not living in the 1940s where you didn't know it was happening. Now you know. And our people say, when you know the difference, when you really know the difference, you have to take action. That's your duty and obligation. That's why they gave you those teachings. We're really happy to come to Portland and to see the turnout. That's what this is all about. Some reason, some way to pull us together. We're going to take the message to Olympia, Tacoma, Seattle, back to Lummi. This poll is going to go up to Tsleil-Waututh Nation. They're on the Fraser River. It's a little nation. They're famous because their chief was famous, Dan George. His daughter and grandson are fighting, and grandchildren are fighting in Kinder Morgan. They don't want the toxin from the tar sands coming to their territory. They're going to put it right in the ship right there, right next door to them. And they're saying no. And they're just a little nation. And we went up there to hear them. And this is what she said. She said, I went up there, way up there where the tar sands is. I want to see myself. And she's an elder. Her grandchildren are growing up as activists. She's an elder. She goes, nobody hears the mob that was crying as I held her as her grandchild died from cancer caused by tar sands. Nobody out there hears that mother. That's her message. Somehow, we have to be able to tell the world what it's like for those natives. They still have to eat those animals. They still have to eat those fish. There's no grocery store there. They have no choice. They live off the land. And it's killing them now. There's cancer in the animals and the salmon from the tar sands. And so we promised her we will carry your message wherever we go. That's how we do it. We carry each other's messages wherever we go. And we have to find some more people. And we have to pull them in. We re-challenge the churches to remember. Back in '87, the churches of the Northwest said, we're sorry for helping destroy your religion, your culture, or passively sitting back and letting it happen. We promised to help. Well, we're calling on them. Then come forward. Quit using the excuse that there's pro and con inside the church. Stand up for the earth. This is God's creation. That's your duty. So we want them out here side by side. We appreciate the prayers. We really appreciate the prayers and the spirituality in all religions. That's the beauty of being Native American. You're required by traditional law to respect other people's religious persuasion, their spirituality. They have as much right as you do. But in the process, we became oppressed. But still, we refuse to disappear from history. We're still here. And we're still going to battle for our part of the earth. So we thank you. We thank you for coming out and listening to these words. But we got to have another gathering, and another gathering, and another gathering. It's not over as long as we live. Hushka.